Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Welcome to another live stream. The Middle East is on the verge of a major escalation, and I would not be surprised if we are weeks, perhaps only days or hours away from witnessing U.S. strikes on Iran after the most recent developments within the past 24 hours. Very ominous indeed. This will likely have huge implications for the global economy, for the price of crude oil and other commodities, and in a lot of ways this is going to have a major impact on our daily lives. Let's talk about what's going on. The past 24 hours we got a drone strike on a U.S. base on the Syria Jordan border, which has now tragically resulted in the death of 3 U.S. service personnel, with 34 sustaining injuries. This is going to be a red line crossed, it looks like. This is terrible, it's tragic, but unfortunately also predictable that as we've seen this conflict escalate, we've got these U.S. troops stationed over there. They are targets for our enemies in the region. Now they are blaming this on Iranian-backed militias operating in Syria and Iraq. It's the first deadly strike against U.S. forces, notably since October. Here's what the president has to say. Have no doubt we will hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing. It's looking like this is going to mean U.S. strikes on Iran. Look at this reaction here from the more hawkish members of Congress. This from Politico. Republican hawks call for retaliation after three killed in Iranian-backed strike. And you can see here Senator Roger Wicker saying it is time to act with purpose and resolve in response to attacks that have tragically taken the lives of American service members, injured scores more. He went on to say we must respond to these repeated attacks by Iran and its proxies by striking directly against Iranian targets and its leadership. It is time to act swiftly and decisively for the whole world to see. And I mean, this is the direction that this has been headed in for months now. It's no secret that there are those who want a war involving Iran, but that's not going to be as easy as fighting the Houthis, as fighting Hamas. This is going to lead to some real problems, which we're going to talk about. Let's hear some more of this hawkish rhetoric from some of our leadership here. The Biden administration can take out all the Iranian proxies they like, but it will not deter Iranian aggression. This is from Senator Lindsey Graham. He says, I'm calling on the Biden administration to strike targets of significance inside Iran, not only as a reprisal for the killing of our forces, but as a deterrence against future aggression. Now, what might those targets that Lindsey Graham would like to target be? Here's a tweet from Lindsey Graham on October 8th, where he says that Israel and the United States should go after Iranian oil refineries and oil infrastructure, the lifeblood of the Iranian economy. So is that what we are going to witness? Well, we're going to see, but it's looking more and more likely this is the sort of thing that is right around the corner. Senator Tom Cotton said the only answer to these attacks must be devastating military retaliation against Iran's terrorist forces, both in Iran and across the Middle East. Senator John Cornyn said, target Iran. Very simple statement. Lindsey Graham, October 31st, he did say, is it a red line for Iran to orchestrate an attack on our forces that kills an American? Well, that has now happened. So this is a red line that was laid out in advance. It should come as no surprise that now that this tragedy has occurred, there will likely be a significant escalation. Hit Iran now, hit them hard. That from earlier today, 4 hours ago, Senator Lindsey Graham. Now let's talk about why this is going to be a huge problem for the U.S. economy. Well, let's take a look at the region here. We've got Iran, the strike that occurred last night on the border of Jordan and Syria over here. Now, we've had a lot of problems with the Houthis who are down here in Yemen targeting shipping going through the Suez Canal, right? That is likely to lead to significant inflationary pressures that are still working their way through the system. There's some lag on this, but you can see ships have to go right by Yemen here to go through the Suez Canal. So that's a huge problem. But what's going to be a much bigger problem, draw the attention over here to Iran, is what's going to happen when we begin striking them and they get involved in earnest. Because remember, I mean, they get a say in this too. What are they going to do? Well, they're likely going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is right here, this area between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Now, this region, these straits, more than 20% of global crude oil production travels through the Strait of Hormuz. So all of these hawkish leaders in Washington seem to think that attacks on Iran will deter further aggression. I'm fairly skeptical of that. Iran is not the Houthis. Iran is not Hamas. Iran is a pretty sophisticated nation state. They've got, maybe not the equivalent to a U.S. military, but what they do have, a lot of cheap drones. Wouldn't be surprised if they've got some tricks up their sleeves, like anti-ship hypersonic missiles stationed throughout the region. I mean, remember, this is all going to be occurring right there in their backyard, far, far away from U.S. bases of support. And true, we have military bases all over the region, but that might actually turn out to be a bit more of a liability than an aid, as you can witness in the attack last night on U.S. troops in their base in the Middle East. I mean, the more troops we have in the Middle East, the more targets there are for Iran, and certainly I'm sure that they have been preparing for just this. They have means of asymmetric warfare to retaliate against U.S. military forces in the region. I mean, they might have some cyber attacks lined up. They might have sleeper cells in the West. Who knows? But when the strikes are launched, and I think that's coming soon, we better be prepared for the fallout. And even if some of those more extreme cases don't come to pass, shutting down the Strait of Hormuz is almost a no-brainer for them. I mean, they've done it in the past when tensions have escalated with the U.S., and I would not be surprised if they launch mines in the Strait of Hormuz, if they have missiles similar to what the Yemen has been launching. And if anything, I mean, the strikes against Yemen have not deterred the Houthis from launching their anti-ship missiles. So are we to be led to believe that we can't stop the Houthis in Yemen, a relatively speaking ragtag group that is armed by Iran, but we're going to be able to stop Iran itself? I mean, this is magical thinking. Will we ultimately prevail in some kind of an all-out military conflict with Iran? Yeah, probably. But what's the cost going to be? It's going to be absolutely enormous. And one thing that we are going to witness is likely going to be a surge in the price of crude oil. I would not be surprised if this price, which has been ticking higher for the past couple of weeks, you can see on the 5-day chart here, we've gone from $74 to $78 just over the past 5 trading days. When markets open tomorrow, I think this price is going to be heading a lot higher. And should those strikes be launched against Iran, well, I don't think that that risk is being priced into this market at all. This is going to lead to an inflationary nightmare here in the United States. I mean, we're already facing a financial crisis. We have elevated inflation. We have an insolvent banking sector. We have a commercial real estate crisis. The Fed desperately needs to get into these markets and intervene to bail out the banks, to bail out this faltering, debt-addicted U.S. economy. And a surging price of crude oil is going to make that very difficult for them. And so we're likely going to be facing an inflationary nightmare. Now, I think the Fed's going to have to cut. They do that at the same time that global energy prices are surging. It could be an absolute disaster. I mean, an inflationary nightmare. I don't think it's just going to be gold or oil heading higher. I think very likely gold and silver could also be making some big moves. I just bought some more of these 1-ounce silver coins here from SD Bullion. Look, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not giving you financial advice, but I think that one of the ways to insulate yourself from what is coming will be to have exposure to physical precious metals in your possession. If this war kicks off, I would not trust paper markets. I would not trust anything except gold and silver that you can hold in your hand. You want something a little more speculative, maybe silver's the way to go. You want something a little bit more of a sure thing as a store of value, less volatile. Gold might be the way to go, but this is going to have huge ramifications for the dollar. That's if you don't even count the effect that this is going to have on the global financial system and the petrodollar. This is going to be a real problem. Look at this. This is Houthis again. Now, these are the Iranian-backed Houthis. They most recently, this is a report from yesterday, targeted directly a U.S. destroyer, and they actually hit a British ship. So there has been, this was the oil tanker. I believe it was carrying aviation fuel, had a huge fire on it. Oil tankers are going to be avoiding the Suez Canal. Oil tankers may very soon no longer be able to transit the Straits of Hormuz as a result of these strikes on Iran. Global shipping is going to be majorly disrupted. There is no sign that this conflict is de-escalating. In fact, quite the contrary. I think a red line has now been crossed. U.S. service personnel have been killed. It's only a matter of time until we get in here and strike Iran. I'm not saying this is a good thing. I think it would be better if we did not have war. War is very destructive. It's very inflationary. It creates a huge amount of debt, a huge amount of borrowing. And look at this most recent report from express.co.uk about how the Royal Navy is facing a crisis as UK warships lack firepower to strike Houthi land bases near Red Sea. Now, this has some implications for the U.S. Let's read this story here. None of Britain's destroyers or frigates have the firepower to attack Iran-backed Houthi targets on land, it has been claimed. A British defense source claimed the HMS Diamond, a warship considered a jewel in the naval crown, had not joined the retaliatory strikes against Houthi targets because it didn't have the capability to fire to land targets. So these are going to be our allies in the region. This is going to be our coalition. Apparently, the British Navy, none of their destroyers or frigates have surface-to-surface missiles, the ones in the region. Yeah, that's a big problem. The inability leaves the U.S. to carry out the majority of the strikes with support from Royal Air Force planes based some 1,500 miles away. So who's going to be footing the bill for all of these strikes? Well, it's not going to be the coalition. It's going to be the U.S. It's all going to be funded by the printing press. And this is going to lead to inflation from both fronts. A lot of money is going to be printed. The U.S. national debt now at $34.143 trillion. Expect this number to get much, much bigger. And basically what's going on right now, these anti-ship drones, these anti-ship missiles, ones that cost $20, $30, $40, $50,000, we're shooting them down with interceptors that run about $1 million a pop. We're dropping Tomahawk missiles to the tune of $2 million a pop. We're going to be dropping a lot more of those on Iran very soon. But, again, these airstrikes, they're not stopping the Houthis. We really think they're going to stop Iran? I don't know what the plan here is. It seems to be to launch a bunch of very expensive airstrikes and then sit back and, wait to see the reaction, which has been thus far more attacks on U.S. naval vessels and on international shipping. So I really don't know what the end game is here. Are we going to have boots on the ground in Iran? Is that the plan? What's the other alternative? Dropping nuclear weapons on them? I don't know how this is going to play out. It's not going to be good, though. And the idea that we somehow can deter Iran from operating in its own backyard with some airstrikes, I think is incredibly misguided. But, these politicians, they all get a nice chunk of change, I'm sure, from the defense companies. They're going to be big winners here. All those Tomahawk missiles to $2 million a pop, Raytheon, RTX company, they're going to be getting a lot of government contracts for those in the near future. So they're going to continue to fund the campaigns of these politicians like Lindsey Graham and his cohort. And we should be very concerned about this. I'm stacking precious metals. I don't know what else to tell you. Whatever you think might be a good way to get prepared when the price of gas is going to be heading much higher. The price of everything is going to be getting much higher. Global shipping, global supply chains going to be disrupted. I would say if you need it, get it now, because pretty soon a lot of these things are not going to be available. If you thought that the Putin price hike was bad, get ready for a huge amount of inflation. And of course, this is very convenient for the administration as well, for the powers that be, because they'll have a scapegoat for all of the inflation that gets unleashed when the Fed starts to print again. They're going to be printing trillions of dollars, pumping that into the economy, trying to get this thing going during this election year. And what is going to be happening? I mean, inflation is going to be soaring out of control, but they'll be able to blame it on Iran. That's going to be the scapegoat, I think. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's not looking good. Stay safe and happy stacking, everybody. I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.